Hello students, welcome back. In our today's video, we shall be studying about the various staffing approaches in a global environment and their structural implications. So there are primarily three main staffing approaches which are used in international human resources management. One of them is something called as the ethnocentric approach. Another one is something called as the polycentric approach. And the third one is geocentric approach. So let's have a look at what we can understand by ethnocentric approach here. The ethnocentric approach means the company, whenever it opens a subsidiary in another country, the key management positions of that subsidiary will be staffed by the parent company's nationals. If I have to give you one example over here, supposing, let us take a case of Toyota. Okay, Toyota, which is a Japanese company. Now, supposing Toyota opens up a branch in India, which is the parent company, which is the parent country here. Japan is the parent country, and the parent company is the headquarters, the main company, which is located in Japan. Which is the host country here? Host country is India, and the subsidiary is there in India. So the key management position, so whenever the subsidiary is opened, the key management positions, some of the top management positions will be staffed by Japanese nationals, the parent company's nationals. So in Japan headquarters also, it is the Japanese nationals. In the Indian subsidiary also, it is the Japanese nationals who are the Japanese people who will be occupying some of the top positions. Now, what are the reasons for adopting an ethnocentric approach here is, the first reason here is, there may be lack of qualified individuals in the host country or in the subsidiary. So when the company opens a branch in another country, opens a subsidiary in another country, especially if the other country is a less developed country, it's a developing economy, you may not be able to find people of sufficient technical expertise or skills. Supposing we open a company, let us say in a place like South Africa or Nairobi or something, you may not find, there will be a few people, but you may not be able to find sufficient people who have the required skills or the expertise to probably handle those top positions. Even if they do, they may require a little amount of training. Okay, so this is the reason why, one of the reasons why companies prefer to go for go for the parent company nationals to staff the foreign subsidiary. Then have a look at the second point over here. In order to maintain corporate culture, so supposing the success of a company is dependent upon its culture, once it opens a subsidiary in another country, the other country's nationals may not follow the same culture of what this parent company is actually following. Culture to culture, it differs from country to country. Now, since the foreign countries' nationals may not follow the culture, if at all the top positions are occupied by those foreign people, it is better to designate the parent company's nationals itself in order to transfer the culture to the host country. So, supposing, again, if I have to take an example here, Japan, supposing for Toyota, their the culture of the organization is excellent supply chain management and excellent relationship with your suppliers. Because of that excellent relationship with the suppliers, because of which there is good just-in-time approach in inventory stocking, you don't have to spend extra on inventory costs because your relationship with the supplier is extremely good. It's just this particular point which is making Toyota successful. Obviously, Supplier relationship, which is one of the aspects what the company's culture is adopting, is an important aspect which is leading to the success of the company. Obviously, when the company is opening branches or opening subsidiaries in other countries, they will definitely want to maintain that same good supplier relationship, for which the same culture what has been adopted in the parent company is required to be adopted in the host country's company as well, in the subsidiary company as well. So, so definitely it is the parent company's national who will be going to the host country and who will train those host countries nationals to imbibe this culture in them in order to maintain the success of the company. So when this is the situation also, you go for an ethnocentric approach. And finally, transfer of core competence. Core competence is an important knowledge or a skill which a company has, which is making it successful compared to its competitors. So this particular important knowledge or skill, it is only like the parent company who has knowledge on it. Once it opens a branch, the parent company and the parent company's nationals have good knowledge on it. Once it opens a subsidiary in a foreign country, in another host country, you need to train those people to, again, it's similar to corporate culture here. You need to train the host country nationals about how to develop this knowledge, about how to gain the skill, and how to achieve this core competence. So in order to train them also, you will have to designate the parent company nationals to the subsidiary in the foreign country. Okay, so I can take a very simple example over here. See, a tennis player who's very good will not be able to teach other people tennis by just writing a handbook, will not be able to teach other people to play good tennis by just writing a handbook or writing a manual or a pamphlet. They will have to personally coach the other person to become a good tennis player. So in a similar way, when you're trying to coach another person with regards to a good knowledge or a skill, it is better that the parent company national travels to the host country subsidiary and coaches those people for quite a long time. With regards, the skill can be anything. It can be with regards to production, it can be with regards to marketing, or it can be absolutely anything as such. Okay, so actually Procter and Gamble, it has been adopting an ethnocentric approach all this while. Okay, so especially when it comes to their marketing skills, it is the Procter and Gamble's parent company, United States. These nationals have very good knowledge on the marketing skills. So supposing they open a subsidiary in India, or they're opening a subsidiary in, let us say, like Singapore or any other country, they used to um, staff the top positions only with US nationals. Now, the role of these US nationals in India or in Singapore or in, let us say, Australia or anything, was to train those host countries nationals into how to do good marketing. Okay, this takes quite a large number of years. It's not something which can just be done within a few months. Okay, so it takes many years to train the host countries nationals regarding your core competency. In Procter and Gamble's case, it is the marketing strategies. So after you have sufficiently trained the host countries nationals, the parent company national can come back to United States, and in the meantime, in the host countries top positions, after the training is completed, you can always staff the host countries nationals. So if as of now, Procter and Gamble has started staffing, has started employing the host countries nationals itself to occupy top position. So right now what's happening is, if there is a Procter and Gamble branch in India, it is headed by Indians. If there is a Procter and Gamble branch in Singapore, it is headed by Singaporeans. But all this while, it was an American who was heading. after the training and all those things has got completed, they have now started staffing it with the host country's nationals itself. So this is the way in which ethnocentric approach is taken care of. Moving on to the next type of staffing approach in a global environment, you have something called as polycentric approach. So a polycentric approach is, it's the opposite of ethnocentric approach. In a polycentric approach, the key management positions in the host country or the subsidiary company are manned by or are filled with the host country's nationals. So a company from Japan is opening a branch in India. So the subsidiary of India, it will be manned by Indian individuals in the top management. Okay. So what is the advantage of a polycentric approach over here is it avoids cultural myopia. So the meaning of cultural myopia over here is, it is a situation where the nationals of the parent company fail to look into the culture of the host country. Culture to culture, it differs from country to country. Culture differs from country to country. So what happens is the parent company's national, they do not understand the host country's cultural differences, which may require a different approach in terms of marketing and in terms of management and in terms of many other operations. So because of this failure to understand, they make very costly mistakes, due to which the company might start facing a lot of expenses and may start facing certain losses for a certain point of time. So to avoid all these situations, it is better to go for the host country's nationals itself for staffing the key management position, because the host country nationals know about their country's culture. If there are Indian managers who are heading the Procter & Gamble division of India, they will know how exactly things are working in India. They will know how things are operating in India. See, take an example of HUL for instance. The way in which marketing, the way in which the distribution of products in America it takes place may be different from how it happens in India. America may have very good infrastructure and transport, so you can easily distribute products to the different locations, whereas in India it is not like that. Some areas of India where HUL caters their product to, remote villages, places which are having extremely high altitude, they are very much in hill stations. So such places, not only in India, even in Nepal also they have their operations. Kathmandu and all these regions, they are extremely in an elevated position, and you cannot even reach those places even by using vehicles. You will, the products literally have to be distributed or carried on a yak's back. Okay. So this is the way in which the distribution happens in some of these rugged terrains. That is not the case in other countries whose infrastructure and the roads and all those things are extremely good. So identifying this, companies like HUL, Procter and Gamble and all these people, after sufficient training is given to the Indian nationals, they have now started staffing the top position with Indian nationals itself. So this is a way where cultural myopia can be avoided, and it is less expensive. Polycentric approach is less expensive. I'll tell you the reason why. See, expatriates is nothing but the parent company's national who are coming and working in the host country's subsidiary. Those people are very expensive. In order to motivate those people to transfer here and work in another country, you will have to motivate them with a lot of pay packages. Okay, see, you may literally have to give them a package which is 3 times what they are drawing in their own country. Supposing a manager is drawing a salary of, let us say, somewhere about $20,000 per month in his own country. When he is transferred to India, or when he is transferred to Singapore or any other country apart from his country, you will have to pay him $60,000 to $70,000 from US point of view in order to make him shift from that country to the foreign country. Okay, so it's obviously an expensive proposition. On the other hand, when you use a polycentric approach, where you're using the host country's nationals itself to staff some of the key positions, they will be relatively less expensive. Okay, so they will not be as costly as the foreign countries. Sorry, they will not be as costly as the parent country's managers. The third approach, staffing approach in a global environment, is something known as a geocentric approach. So what is a geocentric approach here is key management positions are staffed by individuals from any nationality, from any country, irrespective of whether you're staffing for a subsidiary or irrespective of whether you're staffing for a parent company. You will be taking people from any country, provided they have the requisite capabilities and the technical skills. So if I have to give you an example over here, supposing Samsung, okay, Samsung, it's a South Korean company. So now if Samsung, it opens out a subsidiary in, let us say, Australia. They are opening a subsidiary in England. They are opening a subsidiary in India. What can happen in a geocentric approach is the parent company, which is there, the parent company of Samsung, which is there in South Korea, may be headed by, or it may be staffed by a resident from, let us say, Singapore. In case of the subsidiary, when I'm taking the subsidiary of India, the top positions, the key management positions may be staffed by a resident from Russia. In the United States, the key management positions may be staffed from a resident from Netherlands. In Britain, the key management position may be staffed by a resident from United States. So I hope you're getting the idea over here. Anybody from any country, from any nationality can occupy key management positions in any branch, irrespective of whether it's a parent company or irrespective of whether it is a subsidiary. So this is how geocentric approach operates. So there are companies like Pepsi, Google, and all these companies do adopt a more or less a geocentric approach to their staffing position. Okay, now what is the advantage of geocentric approach here is the best skills and capabilities are identified. Because people of skills and capabilities can come from any country. Then adaptability of individuals. This is a very important point here. See, what happens is when you staff people from any nationality in any branch and they perform well in that branch or that subsidiary, it means that these individuals are extremely adaptable to any culture, to any country, to any environment. Thereby, whenever you have to transfer people, you might have to transfer people or put them on another country's postings, they will definitely perform well even if they go to another country and have to do their work. So these people are adaptable to any situation. They feel comfortable in working in a number of cultures. See, as I already told you, different countries have different cultures. Many expatriates, that is many people of one country working in another country, may not be comfortable in adapting to the different cultures. They may end up coming back from their assignments. Okay, but however, when you go for a geocentric approach, you're specifically identifying those individuals who can adapt themselves to any culture across the globe. They're extremely adjusting people. So definitely they will do well in whatever foreign assignment they are posted in. See, we should understand one thing. Many times why foreign assignments might fail is not because the person heading the corporate is technically incompetent or something. They will have extremely good technical competence, but the problem is they will not be able to adjust themselves to that foreign country's culture. Because of inability to adjust themselves to that culture, they may not be able to manage well. They may not be able to manage the people who are working under them well. They may simply get frustrated. Because of this frustration, they may end up coming back to their own country and leaving the foreign assignment, and they may even resign from the company also. Okay, so in the geocentric approach, if you go for, this problem will actually not occur. Okay, so this is where, to sum up, 3 approaches you should remember: ethnocentric, polycentric, and geocentric approach. Let's move on to the next topic here. We have something someone known as expatriates. In the ethnocentric approach and geocentric approach, if you remember, we are dealing with expatriates. So who are expatriates? Expatriates are citizens from one country who are working in another country. Wipro is an Indian company. Wipro opens a branch in Malaysia. So supposing a person from India is going and working in Malaysia for maybe temporarily or permanently, they are called as an expatriate for Malaysia. Okay. Supposing in IBM, IBM being a United States company, supposing a person from US is coming and working in India here, in the Indian subsidiary, that US person is called as an expatriate for India. Okay. So this is what expatriates you're dealing with. Ethnocentric approach and geocentric approach, if you remember, deal with expatriates. Okay. Now, we have to move on to another topic here, something called as expatriate failure. Expatriate failure is the failure of the firm's selection policies from identifying individuals who will be able to thrive in a foreign country. So the selection policies have not been very good here. The selection process has not been good over here. During the selection, the company has chosen those people who will not be able to thrive in a foreign country, who will not be able to succeed in a or adjust or adopt in a foreign country. So what is the result if you're choosing people who are not able to adjust? The result is premature return from the foreign assignment. So these people would not have completed the foreign assignment. Before the assignment is completed itself, they will leave the foreign assignment as it is, and they will come back to their own country. And many times it so happens that these people will end up resigning the company also altogether. Because see, what happens is, once they come back from that incomplete foreign assignment, there is no position vacant in their own country as well. Okay, so here also there is no position vacant in their own country, and in that foreign assignment also they are not willing to take it up. So it is because of these reasons they have to make a decision of quitting the company altogether. So whenever an expatriate failure occurs, it comes at an expense. So there is a cost which is associated with expatriate failure. What is that cost is? As I had already told you in the previous slide, expatriates are expensive. They charge almost, you have to pay them almost 3 times of the salary what they are drawing in their own country to convince them to work on a foreign assignment. And there is also the cost involved in relocating these expatriates. See, it's not only an expense which you have to incur on the expatriates, it's an expense which you may have to incur for their family also. So you as a company will have to incur expenses in terms of arranging for some kind of a medical insurance for the expatriate, or you may have to arrange for the education of that expatriate's children. Okay, so these are all then arranging for the house rent or whatever the expatriates may be paying in the foreign country, arranging for accommodation for the expatriates. All these things are costs of relocation. So when an expatriate fails, when they come back without completing their foreign assignment, all these additional expenses that you have incurred in terms of their extra salary, which is 3 times, and in terms of their cost of relocation, all these additional expenses would all go for a waste. And it's not only that, you will also have to find some other person to take up that foreign assignment. So that extra salary what you will have to give for that some other person is an additional expense over here again. So with this, I have completed this video. In our next video, I shall be explaining to you about what are the reasons for expatriate failure. Thank you.